Mark Roberts is a senior level sales and marketing leader with over 35 years experience driving profitable sales growth in market leading organizations such as Timken, VMI, Gardner Denver, Mobility Works, and Frito-Lay. He's an author, public speaker, sales trainer, and sales coach, and the founder of the popular business development blog NoSmokeandMirrors.com, which is ranked #1 in Google for the term fixing sales problems. His company, OTB Solutions LLC, is a sales effectiveness consulting and training company where he helps clients diagnose and improve sales effectiveness and hire and develop their sales talent to improve sales results. Welcome to the podcast, Mark. I'm so excited to have you.
Well, thank you for having me.
I think that you're going to deliver some fantastic information that people really need to hear. So I'm going to just jump right in and ask the first question. Why don't you just explain to people a little bit about what you do and then kind of why you do it?
Well, for about 30 years, actually 36 years, I've been helping companies and leaders grow their companies profitably. Okay. From one little company that was $4 million that we grew to $300 million and sold it. Whoa. To, $7 billion companies. It really doesn't matter the size, but what I look for is companies that want to grow profitably.
Yeah.
And I've done that using more of a scientific approach than, gut and intuition. Mm-hmm. What a lot of CEOs and business leaders have always said was, I wish my sales ran like my plant. I do this and this happens. Well, actually it can. Wow. And that's how I help people.
Wow. And why? Why do you do it?
Well, it's a real passion on my heart. There's a lot of people that are really strong, like the book, The E-Myth talks. They're really strong with an amazing product, an amazing service, but they just don't have my experience as far as sales. Mm-hmm. So for me to help them make their vision a reality is really exciting for me.
Yeah, that's very cool. So back to selling naked, where did you come up with that concept?
Well, I like to read, what very successful people write. Mm-hmm. And I'm probably paraphrasing it wrong, but Warren Buffett said, you can tell who was swimming naked when the tide goes out. And what that made me think about was, a lot of salespeople were just getting by when business was good. They didn't have to be that good.
Yeah.
I mean, the revenue was coming in. It would have probably came in anyways. But when the tide went out with COVID-19, it was very apparent who needed help.
Yeah, exactly.
And about 30% of your sales team shouldn't even be in sales, by the way. From the assessments that we do, they don't have a will to sell. They don't want to be in sales. So they're in a role they don't even want to be in. So we shouldn't be surprised that they're selling naked.
Yeah, right. That's cool.
One of the biggest shifts that I've seen since, the last 3 months of COVID-19 is people are getting frustrated. I'm frustrated, right? We're quarantined. We can't go to our favorite restaurant. But when it comes to sales, people are out there trying to sell like they've always sold and it's not working. Mm-hmm. And they're frustrated. The statistics are about 60% of salespeople will not be effective working remote.
Wow.
Unless they're trained or coached.
Yeah.
So we have them that they're not trained or coached. We have all the constraints of COVID where we can't have face-to-face meetings. And buyers have changed. Right now, cash is king. Mm-hmm. Buyers are trying to have less inventory. They want to see that inventory move. But what's happened is a lot of companies haven't adjusted their value proposition. Mm-hmm. They haven't trained their salespeople how to use things like today, Zoom, how to have virtual selling skills. So again, that's where I come in and I try to help them. Because if you haven't updated your website in the last year, chances are your salespeople are selling naked. If you haven't trained them, and most companies train people on product or application, but very few, about 50%, train on sales skills. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't trained your salespeople on skills like how to do a virtual sales call, they're selling naked.
Yeah.
And if you haven't updated your value proposition by talking to your customers now and you're selling like you've sold for the last 10 years.
Like nothing is wrong in the world right now, right?
I actually created 3 courses for trade associations to help their members learn how to sell virtually. I offered them for free just because it was such a problem. And one of the things I talk about in that training is talk about people first, then the business. The people that you're going to remember when this whole thing is over, and it will pass, we just don't know when, are the people that served you, not the people that tried to sell you.
Yeah.
And buyers' problems have changed. They have new problems that they've never faced before. So if you go into a call with a customer, make sure and understand what that is. Mm-hmm. And don't assume. You know the old adage, if you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, right?
Yeah, right.
I'd say about close to half of the distributors and manufacturers that I work with today are at or a little bit above last year.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Don't assume nobody's buying. I'm going into a webinar tomorrow, and one of the topics is it okay to sell again? It's always okay. It's how you do it that needs to be modified.
Yeah. So tell me one thing that you think somebody should do different when they're doing a Zoom sales call.
Well, definitely do your homework. I have a course on pre-call planning that's really important, but it's even more important now. Do a little research with LinkedIn, with Google, go to the company website, read their press review, maybe even look at their quarterly report. Buyers want and need to have conversations with salespeople that, as one of my friends, he's an author, describes it. They want to talk to salespeople who are people who are disguised as salespeople who are actually business people.
Yeah.
They want insights. They want ways to improve their bottom line. So do a little bit of homework before the call, and the call is going to go much better.
Yeah. So salespeople do have a unique insight, don't they? When they're working in a certain niche, for example, they are talking to lots of people. They are gathering information that could be beneficial, right?
Yeah, and as long as it's not proprietary. I mean, a lot of my clients actually have me sign an NDA that I'm not even allowed to mention their name, right?
Yeah, right.
Because nobody wants to admit that they want to improve their sales effectiveness. But that industry experience, that, wow, you know what you're facing is something I faced 5 years ago. Is it okay if I talk to you about how we solved it? That is tremendously valuable. Mm-hmm. Because today, about 70% of the sales process is over before a buyer picks up the phone to talk to a salesperson. Mm-hmm. Almost everything they need is online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
what they really are hunting for is what I call a trusted advisor. Mm-hmm. Somebody who's been around, they know the industry, they know the products, and they know a little bit about the business of their business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So do you think it's more beneficial to be on Zoom or on the phone?
It depends on the purpose of the call. Mm-hmm. I have people that I've worked with for 20 years that I just pick up the phone call. We have a relationship. Make sure you understand what the call is about. Mm-hmm. If you can't tell me why you're having a call, don't have one. I have people saying, hey, can we get on a Zoom meeting? I'm like, great, what's it about? Well, we're going to have a meeting. I'm like, well, I know, but what's it about? Is Zoom necessary? Mm-hmm. If you're going to share a slide, you're going to share some insights, maybe show me a product. Yeah. But don't overthink sales. Yeah. Do whatever the customer is most comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. I love being on Zoom sales calls to be able to see people and their nonverbals. I really appreciate that, and I love now that this is becoming more commonplace. So less driving. Do you think in the end of this sort of trend will continue?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is one of the services I offer is a voice of the customer work, mm-hmm. where we actually call your customers and ask them, like, we identify your net promoter score, your customer satisfaction. But what a lot of people want to know right now is, how do you like virtual sales? Mm-hmm. Are you having a good experience? How do you like working on my website? And I just worked for a distributor And over 60% of their customers said, I actually prefer virtual sales. I really haven't enjoyed face-to-face sales for a while, but I didn't know there was anything else.
How cool is that?
And what you're going to find too is also based on the age of the buyer. You know, when I grew up in sales, I mean, obviously I'm going to date myself, but we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers. We went around with a 3-ring binder that was about 3 inches thick, and we were the keeper of the keys. We had all the information. There were no websites, right? Well, today, particularly like millennial buyers, they want answers and fast.
Yeah.
Right. If you can have an answer to them in 10 minutes, why have an hour meeting?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
So again, we just really need to listen to our customers and understand them. All right.
All right. So you have been keeping yourself very busy during this time, writing and speaking. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, one of the things I teach is to understand the market. So I reached out to a lot of the different trade associations that support and train a lot of the different verticals that I serve. Mm-hmm. And they all shared how, you know, they're getting feedback that COVID has really changed a lot of people's businesses. Mm-hmm. And one of the challenges they had, which shouldn't be a surprise, is how do I sell virtually? So I created a series of 3 short courses. They're about 40 minutes each. One talks about, you know, virtual sales. One's about building virtual relationships strategically. Mm-hmm. And then one is about social selling in a digital world. How do you leverage tools like LinkedIn to find out who you should be talking to?
Yeah.
So if any of your listeners are interested, you know, we can attach a YouTube link that they could see one that I did for an association called NAED, where they wanted their members. We actually broke a record for webinars attendance.
Wow. How many people?
How to sell virtually.
Yeah.
And there's some very basic principles and a little adjustments. But again, it all depends on where your team is at. Mm-hmm. If they've never received any sales skills training, then what I would do is put together, you know, a different virtual experience for them. Mm-hmm. My passion is being in front of the room. I get a lot of energy training people. My courses are all very interactive. Mm-hmm. I like what's called a flipped classroom design, where I put the people in the audience to work.
Yeah.
Break off into small groups. They teach each other. Mm-hmm. But with COVID, that's really difficult. So what I've done is I've started doing a number of virtual trainings, 40 minutes, once a week, and teams are calling in. We have a regular time, and we have a schedule of training based on how they scored on their assessments.
Oh, yeah.
One of the tools I use is a sales skills assessment. Mm-hmm. And if you want to drive a salesperson nuts, make them take training they don't need. So my process is, let's first figure out where you're at. Most teams are really skilled, for example, at presentation skills and product. Mm-hmm. But also where a lot of teams need help is closing and negotiating. Mm-hmm. So those usually don't surprise me. But sometimes a team might need help with selling value because they sell based on price. And right now, a lot of buyers have time.
Yeah.
And they're beating up salespeople, and they're using around 11 to 12 tactics that are trained negotiating tactics. So I can help salespeople know when they're in a game and how to respond, so they don't have to give up price.
Yeah. Wow. That's really important to the company's bottom line, right?
So I'll send you the link to the one YouTube that's an illustration of what I'm doing.
Okay. That would be excellent. And give me some examples of where you speak. Like right now, I know you're speaking from home, but in the real world.
I speak at trade events. There's a sales magazine called Selling Power. They've invited me to speak for the last 2 years, I don't know, 3-4 times a year. Mm-hmm. I wrote an article for their magazine on if you had only one thing to do today, what would it be? Mm-hmm. And what it would be is survey your customer.
Wow.
Find out where they're at, what they need, any new problems, and help them solve that problem.
Yeah.
But now I'm doing a lot of virtual events, like the fun podcast for the building industry I just did. Mm-hmm. A lot of trade associations, because everybody is very hungry for how do we get through this?
Yeah.
And it's a pretty big shift for a lot of people.
I think they're hungry for connection too.
Very much so.
Yeah. Right. So that's very good. I love the Zoom opportunity to put people into small rooms and let them interact in their small room and then come back out and share what they learned. To me, I belong to NABO, the National Association of Women Business Owners, and we've been doing our meetings that way. And I've been in these small groups talking to people that I probably never would have talked to at a real meeting. Because it's a big group of 100 people and you talk to, the familiar faces. And so I think that's been really excellent, actually, a chance to get to know other people. So I love it. So tell me what your vision is for your company.
Well, I continue to find and search for companies that don't want to just survive, that they want to thrive. Mm-hmm. Very quickly, I can tell when I speak with a CEO or a business leader or even the sales leader, are they in the mode of, I just want to, survive, or do I want to use this time to reset? Mm-hmm. A lot of the people that I've talked to and I work with had plans. They had plans to improve their digital marketing. They had plans to train their salespeople. They had plans to work on inside sales because it's such an effective model, particularly for new business. But business was good. Their biggest challenge was just finding people.
Yeah.
And one CFO put it this way. He goes, he says, we had plans to have a very aggressive digital marketing and e-commerce website within the next 3 years. Mm-hmm. After COVID, the CEO wants it in 3 months.
Yeah.
So what I'm finding is that companies who want to bounce, who really want to use this downtime and get the maximum benefit from it, are training their team now. They're giving them the basic skills. Think about it this way. If 50% of the sales teams have not been trained, how much more powerful would your team be if they were?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So do you use LinkedIn to find new prospects for your own business?
Oh, I do it all the time.
You do?
I teach to lead with content, because what it does is it shows competence and it builds trust, mm-hmm. and then learn about the other person. Mm-hmm. And so LinkedIn is a very powerful tool that a lot of people don't understand. Mm-hmm. That's why I created the one short course on social selling in a digital world. I teach people that LinkedIn is not about just searching for a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I find like a lot of, particularly like manufacturing companies, have employees that, have done business a certain way for maybe 10, 15 years, and they're on LinkedIn, but they don't know how to use it. Mm-hmm. After my course, I received, actually on LinkedIn, a number of messages just thanking me, because it's a very powerful tool. Back in the day, we were sharing stories of what sales used to be like. But what it used to be like is we would go to a receptionist at the front desk who was manning a phone and say, hey, who should I be talking to that does this? Mm-hmm. Those receptionists aren't even there anymore.
Right.
So what LinkedIn does is it helps you identify who you should be speaking with. And then also, what are they interested in? You can do some great research on them, their company. You can ask them to connect to you. You can very softly send them maybe a couple interesting articles. I share a lot of articles that I don't even write, but serve my community.
Yeah. Right.
And over time, people build trust with you by doing that.
Mm-hmm. Do you do that just in your feed, or do you do that in private messages to those people?
Both. Mm-hmm. I do it in my feed. I try to use a ratio of 10 to 1. I will share 10 articles of really good content, even from competitors, mm-hmm. if I think it's going to help my network, the one that I do.
Yeah.
And I have a YouTube channel where I've done things like, and I did a series for CEOs. You don't have to go it alone. Uh-huh. When I surveyed CEOs, the disturbing thing was a lot of them felt that I'm the CEO. I'm supposed to figure this out myself. And ironic, though, that same CEO has a golf pro that teaches them how to swing. They have a fitness trainer teaching them how to get fit. Why wouldn't you ask for help in your business?
Yeah.
A lot of CEOs come from operations and finance backgrounds. Mm-hmm. So sales is kind of like a dark art to them.
Yeah.
And it's often a very big frustration point.
Yeah.
So those are the folks that I look for and I try to help.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I really despise it when somebody connects with me on LinkedIn and says something like, "Oh, I saw your profile and I would just love to connect with you." So then you accept it and the next message is, "Buy my stuff. I've got this perfect program for you. Buy my stuff."
Or you get 6 paragraphs, right? I tell people, and again, my one course on virtual selling, I draw an analogy to virtual dating. Now, I've never done it. I've been married 31 years, but my son actually met his fiancée. They're getting married in 2 weeks on one of the apps, right?
Uh-huh.
But I promise you, if you went right for the close after you just met somebody on one of those apps, you're not going to be very successful.
Yeah.
So why would we know better.
Yeah.
So why are we selling different when we work with business relationships than regular relationships?
Yeah. I don't know why. Why do people do that? Are they in scarcity mentality, or they just think, "Oh, I'll throw all this out and somebody's going to bite"? Or why? Why do they keep doing that?
Well, one of the big areas that I focus on is sales mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And if you believe something, it is going to be true.
Yeah, I agree.
And what I have to do is help salespeople reframe.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, there's salespeople operating in total fear mode.
Mm-hmm.
Fear for their jobs, fear for their income, fear what the future may hold. Will their business even be in business?
Yeah.
So when you're operating in fear mode, the smart, rational part of your brain actually shuts down. Mm-hmm. Which is good, because if you were in a situation where you had to run, all the blood is being pumped to that part of your body to escape.
Yeah.
But we need to get them out of that mode. We need to reframe the situation.
Yeah.
When salespeople come to me, like when I coach a team, after I do the training, I usually am engaged for 3 to 6 months to coach the sales leader, sometimes some of the salespeople. Mm-hmm. And once I hear a limiting belief, I really need to help them reframe it, because until we reframe it, they're not going to be very successful.
I know.
When COVID first happened, what I kept hearing was, "It's rude for me to call somebody now during a pandemic." Mm-hmm. Let's reframe that. Do you want to help somebody? Yeah, I'd help everybody. Okay, so if your call was about helping them, which is called worthy intent, would you do it? Well, yeah, but I got to hit my numbers. Okay, work with me here. All the customers, particularly your good customers right now, double down on those relationships. Learn more about them. Learn more about their business. Your buyer actually has time. Mm-hmm. Build your network throughout their company, not just the buyer. Maybe it's an engineer. Maybe it's quality. Maybe it's the CEO. Maybe it's the CFO. Build those relationships now that will grow when this is over. Mm-hmm. But if you go into it with what I call commission breath, right, where you're trying to hit your number, it's not going to work. Go into it with worthy intent. Like every day I try to call 10 CEOs. And every one of them, when I get them on the phone, says, "Look, I'm really busy. I just tell you what, I understand. I was a CEO twice. Mm-hmm. I've been the president of 3 companies. I get it. Mm-hmm. All I am asking is, how you doing?
Yeah.
How you doing? Is there anything in particular that's really challenging you with sales and profits today?"
Yeah.
And if they have a need, we schedule an appointment to discuss it. It's rude to call somebody in the middle of their day, they weren't expecting your call, and then keep them on the phone for 30 minutes.
Yeah, right.
My goal in that first call is to quickly qualify if they have a problem that I solve, and then be very respectful of them and their time to build trust and schedule a future meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is such good advice. And I think that others can smell fear a mile away. Scarcity mentality or whatever, it comes through the way you approach everything. So that's really good advice to help them work on their limiting beliefs. So what do you do for fun?
For fun, now that both my kids are grown, my wife and I rescue Labradors.
You do? Fun.
And usually they have some physical issues. They've never been trained. A lot of the dogs that we help come from puppy mills. Mm-hmm. So they've never even played with a toy. They don't know what it's like to live in a house. So we socialize them. We train them. We get them healthy. And then we find them a forever home.
Wow.
It's a lot of fun.
That is. And how many are you tempted to keep?
Well, that's the trouble. We now have 3 labs. We just rescued 30 dogs from a place in West Virginia.
Yeah.
And we all took a couple. And my wife just could not let this one go. So now I have 3 labs.
Well, labs, they are the best.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So I always ask everybody that's on the Sort of Success podcast to give me 3 traits that you think that people need to have in order to be successful. What would you say?
Well, it might shock people, but one of the top traits that I think you need to be successful today is humility.
Mm-hmm.
People look at that as meekness. Not at all. If you know what you know, but also know what you don't know, and you seek to find those answers, you're going to have a very successful business.
Mm-hmm.
So humility is one of those things where every day, keep asking, how can we serve you? How can we help you? How is your business changing? What new challenges are you facing? Always be asking that, and then agilely adjust your company based on what the market is telling you.
Mm-hmm.
The second one would be acts of service. I haven't sold anybody in 30 years. I help them.
Yeah.
And I need that for my own mental framework, right?
Mm-hmm.
My mindset. And then integrity. Do what you say you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
It shocks me how when I go into a company and I talk to their customers, one of the top complaints they have is, well, they promised this and never did it.
Yeah.
Their follow-up is terrible. I did voice of the customer work for a very large paint manufacturer, and they wanted to talk to professional painters, and they were concerned why they weren't growing their business with professional painters. And unfortunately, I had to be the guy to tell them that over 80% of your customers is the bad experience they're having with their salespeople.
Wow.
They didn't get back to me with a quote in time. They never sent me a quote. They didn't listen. I asked them for this specific paint, this specific color. They sent me a quote that was the wrong quote.
Wow.
Think about the business that's lost that could have been won, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's where I think, I use 3 data sets when I help companies. I look at your numbers, and a lot of companies nowadays have more data than they know what to do with. And what I'm really focused on, net profit by customer.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
Because the statistics show me that about 20% of your customers are bleeding profits.
Mm-hmm.
You're not making any money. Every time you ship them, you would have been better off putting a $5 bill in the box.
Yeah.
So I look at your data and we find out who's profitable, who's break even, and who's not. And we create a plan to fix that. That typically will give you a lift in margin within 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
I look at the skills of your team. Where are they really strong? What competencies do your top performers have, and how do we train others to make them top performers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the real important one is the voice of your customer.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you want me to just call your top customers or you want me to call 400 of your customers, I have 3 offerings where we can do that.
Yeah.
But very quickly, we're going to understand their voice.
Yeah. Wow. That is so key too. Great. So how can people reach you? What's the best way?
A lot of people reach me on LinkedIn, Mark Roberts, Outbe Solutions. My brand new website is under development right now, so I can't give you that link.
Okay.
But if you were to Google fix sales problems, my current blog is #1 in the world.
Wow. Congratulations.
It's called No Smoke and Mirrors. It's what I believe. It's what I teach.
Mm-hmm.
Salespeople, the days of salespeople making things up and winging it are over. The days of random acts of sales in terms of process are over. So what I try to do is create more of a sales system, like a scientific approach to sales.
Mm-hmm.
And you can reach me on my cell phone, which is 330-413-8552.
Okay.
And again, when my new website is up, you'll be able to reach me there. You can go to my blog, No Smoke and Mirrors, or find me on LinkedIn. If anybody listening to this wants to connect on LinkedIn and then get some of the articles that I publish, mention in the invite that you met me here, and I'll accept your invite.
Okay, excellent. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks so much for being with me today. It was really interesting to talk to you.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and I hope I gave some of your listeners some ideas to improve their business.
I think you did.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Soar to Success podcast. For more insights into growing your business or improving your quality of life, visit soartosuccessmagazine.com and subscribe to the Soar to Success podcast on iTunes.